The primary objective of the new friends on the real side is as a delivery mechanism for the opportunity of the ears, the recognition of the true reality being the real purpose for all beings in all creational simulators. That the real awareness that we each actually are, that animates through all created consciousness, personal self, and body forms, will have this same isness recognizing imperative, regardless of how the secondary personal selves have been maintained as the prominent position, with the real awareness removed and disconnected from, and where a greater proportion of beings are immersed and locked into their personal self-consciousnesses, thinking that their creation, which serves only as a comparative tool to recognize the is from, is what they actually are. Vast numbers of body types throughout multi-dimensional creation are stepping up and deciding to become more aware at this moment, and many more are on the verge of doing so, that their real awarenesses are ready, but the created personal self, operating as though with a life of its own, needs be brought into the real purpose picture. Required are the real references, the new you true reality connection sound. And as the literal understanding of the is, with the function that creation actually serves, the comparative means by which the is recognized by is accepted, so the personal self-intent can be aligned with the real awareness, real purpose. And as we are our intent, as experience and simulation rearranges itself to facilitate the intents we have established, as though we are redesigning a new movie we are to process through, so then the guides and all simulated situations in relation to the actualizing of the real intent for is recognition feature as our experiences. As I said, the personal selves need be supplied the references, or whatever ideas are required that spark their awareness processes, and oftentimes then it is via the new friends or other awareness becoming beings deployed throughout multi-dimensional creation that initiate this process of awareness in others, being the catalyst that sets the awareness process of the beings approached into motion. And as we have our assignments on the real side, activities as a reflection of our intent set with the is, that our actions are life and awareness supporting, which in turn supports our own awareness process as we earn our way, with everything equaling itself as it does, so all the beings and body types we encounter as we proceed, we will be assisting in actuality in regards to their own real purpose. Those already stepping up, as we may afford them whatever help they may require, those on the verge of doing so, where our presence can spark their process, and even those content to remain locked into the personal self-consciousnesses. For even with the unaware and those that choose to stand as resistance to our assignments, we are still gleaning their attention, and if I enter the experience and situations of, say, a doctor, something of the doctor's intent, focus, and effected assimilation will become apparent to me. The same applies for when we draw the attentions of the unaware and the disruptors. Something of what we are about, the overall, is recognition, real purpose, will enter their experience and personal self-consideration. And so really then, every situation, regardless of its nature or the adversity it presents as, is an opportunity, as we effectively are a constant promotion of the true reality we and every being actually is, by virtue of our sheer presence. And in reality then, as we must face the entirety of creation and the consciousness, for our consciousness is a part of overall consciousness, to fully release agreement and attachment to the consciousness, so we must face everything that overall consciousness comprises of, all the created situations and body forms that are effected from it, being open then to facing it all, as opposed to, say, cherry-picking the experiences based on the personal self-categorization of how some are more favourable than others. And so we are interjected into various real side situations and assignments. We must agree, of course, but by doing so we progress with our objective of the facing of the consciousness and the releasing of all that it comprises of. We become more capable as we are put through the experiences we ever more so become indifferent to them, the indifference and objective position being the real awareness, as opposed to the reactions, thoughts and emotions which move us into the more limited personal self, allowing the real awareness to orchestrate and take the reins, and the simulated interjected forms the real awareness operates become ever more indomitable, as though the agreements constantly being released which had served as limitations, so we become increasingly limitless and untouchable on the real side. And as I said, we then have a constant opportunity to engage and interact with other body types and beings, regardless of their choice of action. That all attention we draw to ourselves, as attention will then be with that which is aside from the personal consciousness, the unknown of the true reality, so any attention and focus we claim will be ultimately awareness beneficial. In this real side experience, I would in fact be in the role as an infiltrator. There were several scenes leading up to the one I found myself in, involving my activities in regards to this assignment, which I was unable to bring back to the physical on waking, but perhaps they were not essential for the personal self, as only the one overall scene would I be shown, where through the visual simulation of what was taking place, coupled with real awareness impressions, would the grasping of the overall picture be so. For it seems I had assumed an outward form, and coupled with whatever was required that I not be exposed, enabled the facilitating of my posing as one of the agents within a certain dark force organisation. The purpose the organisation served wasn't made apparent, but impressions revealed they were in some way part of the machinery, the support structure that holds up the overall dark force simulator control system, serving as just another cog then, as every facet of the tiers and hierarchies of the dark force control systems will be for the purposes of. The agents were numerous, appearing overall human, though undoubtedly many were far more than they appeared on the surface, the control systems throughout creation, awash with shape-shifting reptilians and other body types, with the form-altering ability. As I said, my infiltrating purpose was never determined. The real awareness had afforded the interjected body form all that was necessary that successful infiltration be so without exposure, at least up to a point. That impressions were that I had executed my objective, that the infiltration allowed, and really then to remain in the situation any longer wasn't necessary. However, all the agents, including myself, were gathered in as though a large, elaborately decorated chamber. Standing above us on a platform like a stage would be far more highly placed Dark Force characters, those operating in positions of management where this particular organisation was concerned. These organisation overlords would be oriental in appearance, and indeed the general decor of the scene we were in was oriental in its design and theme. Very possibly then, this was an Earth-based and operating Dark Force organisation, and specifically one more easterly placed, very likely Chinese. It seems they had determined that there was an impostor in their midst. My actions to this point must have alerted the Oriental controllers that there was an infiltrator, although they had been unable to identify the culprit. The Oriental controllers would suddenly empty containers containing an assortment of marked wooden chips onto the ground, and then another Oriental character would step forward. Impressions revealed he was a black magician of a kind, and although he couldn't ascertain the infiltrator directly, he had certain developed divination methods up his sleeve. He would hand each of the agents and myself 2 wooden chips. Each would have inscribed on them a different number. The idea was that the numbers of the 2 chips would correspond with the numbers of 2 chips among those that had been emptied onto the ground, but only if the agent was genuine. The fake impostor would find one or maybe both of his chip numbers absent from the pile. The black magician withdrew. The Oriental controllers on the raised platform would gesture that we were to secure our corresponding chips. My numbers would be 31 and 32, which interestingly, as you add them up, each individual numeral equates to 9, the number of completion. At this point, the real awareness or the guides could have rigged the divination method of infiltrator determining, but as I said earlier, oftentimes we will be put through situations that, yes, could have been avoided, but by doing so we become more capable, more adept. We have the opportunity to engage with more beings as we continue on. Every interaction as an opportunity, as I said earlier. And so, absent of any adjustment to the situation, that my ruse continue to be concealed, predictably every other agent present, being genuine, would secure their corresponding chips. I would find one of mine, but not the other. The impostor was exposed, and now I would be swarmed by the agents at the command of the Oriental controllers, many of them in possession of dazzling martial art abilities. I would defend myself and put down their assailing efforts, for as I always mention, the outcome of all abrasive interaction is agreement dependent. I can't be harmed or eliminated unless I have in my consciousness the idea agreements that permit my assailants the ability to do so. absent of them, and the real awareness can handle all adversity in whatever form it takes, be it environmental or other body types, regardless of how powerful they may be. The situation was somewhat relentless, to the point where I decided to withdraw, rather than continue to defend myself against a never-ending torrent of dark force agents, and so I would throw myself through the nearest window, shattering the glass, entering another section of the building, and run to an elevator positioned at the end of a hallway with all the agents in pursuit. I would enter the elevator and hit the button for floor number 2, the doors sealing just in time, the agents hammering on the other side of them. Floor 2 would in fact lead to the environment beyond where this facility was located, and as I exited, so I would make my way across a rugged, inhospitable terrain, as my exit strategy involved reaching a certain position within this environment. Maybe a spacecraft awaited me. I would never find out, however, as entering the scene, the environment I was in was a large number of what appeared to be an assortment of reptilians, the two-legged bipedal variety, and various reptilian beast-like creatures, some of which resembled dinosaurs. The two-legged reptilians were those where the secondary personal self was established. The more beast-like lizards, more so animal forms, absent of the secondary created self, but with a consciousness, a program and inclination, where they presented as dangerous, predatory beasts, and served then as good companion creatures to the reptilians, as though harnessed as lethal pets. Either these reptilians and their beasts lived in this environment, or they represented security against anyone entering the facility positioned there, or indeed those trying to evacuate it, such as myself. I could have defended myself from the reptilians and the beast pets as readily as I had the agents, but seems this was deemed unnecessary. For although we may use a consciousness agreed to and created means of real side point-to-point motion, spacecraft or whatever else was serving as my means of extraction, but as every situation is agreement effecting, the real awareness simply can sever the agreements which hold us to the experience circumstances, and the simulated body forms can be removed from the effects, and repositioned elsewhere through locking into agreement with other ideas, which effect as alternative creational positioning for the simulated body forms. This would be the case here, as rather than attempt to make it to the exit point, I would be extracted from the situation, removed from the necessity of having to deal with the reptilians and their beast monsters. I would find myself now in another position and in a communication through a Skype-like setup with another stepping up individual, a human woman, who I would learn had also been operating as an infiltrator in the facility and within the organisation, just as I had been. She would convey to me that her assignment also had been a success, and impressions revealed that, like me, she also would be put through the experience of being discovered and forced to evacuate the facility and attempt to reach the same exit point. Impressions further revealed she would not be afforded extraction as I had. She had to utilize the exit strategy provided, the spacecraft, or whatever it may have been. And additionally, although she was on her own process of awareness and had agreed to take on the same assignment that I had, she harboured agreements in her consciousness, as yet unreleased, that would allow the reptilians and their beast creatures to eliminate her. And so she would require assistance seemingly, being put through a far more daunting experience, as this she evidently required for her own unique process, or perhaps had taken on more than she could handle. In such situations, the guides may step in, or will assign other new friends or aware beings to intercede as an alternative option, and so I would be relocated back into the hazardous reptilian and monster teeming environment. The woman had successfully exited the facility, but was in the process of being mauled by several reptilians and insectoid bipedal body forms, ones that looked like walking 6-foot praying mantises. I would come to her aid, dragging the reptilians and mantis beings from her and hurling them across the rocky terrain, then would take her by the hand, and we both would make our way to the exit ship. That although I never would see the scene of our departure, or if we came across a further resistance that may have required I simply relocated from the scene with her, but impressions assured the personal self, we both were extracted. Our infiltration assignments had been completed, although what they entailed exactly wasn't made apparent, and perhaps more details will be forthcoming at a later moment, if such are necessary to be revealed. In an unrelated scene that followed, I would be positioned in a large city. Sat across from me at a table would be another individual, a human, who was on the threshold of moving more so into his awareness process, as it had begun, but he was at a moment where he had much resistance via the personal self in regards to previous lifetimes he had been shown on the real side, lifetimes in which he had been abrasive and destructive of others. It's possible he may have simply been shown these experiences as a part of the process of awareness does entail a facing and releasing of all agreement ideas of the consciousness, including all those in association with all our past lifetimes. That as we release specifically agreements pertaining to lifetimes past, so-called, we will invariably witness the simulation of the situations where the agreements were originally secured. However, the guides will take us through the process in such a way and at a pace that isn't overwhelming or discouraging for the personal self, that although we do need to eventually release all agreements and attachments if we are to stand as the true light real awareness beings we actually are, absent of creation, it wouldn't make sense to show the personal self that which would have it relinquish intent with the years. That if the personal self isn't able to handle the experiences of the destructive past lifetimes, the releasing of the agreements pertaining to them will be retained for now, or maybe the releasing of the agreements in association with the lifetimes will take place, but the simulation of the lifetimes where the agreements being released were forged will not be shown to the personal self. As the dark forces seek to keep every being in creation, as all consciousness will be designed to prop up and maintain the control systems throughout the simulator, so they will in fact employ every means at their disposal to discourage the personal selves of those stepping up and becoming more aware. and one of their various methods, as I have shared before and experienced myself on many occasions, is their accessing and revealing the most destructive past lifetimes of the stepping up individual in an effort to have the individual forfeit the opportunity of the years through whatever reaction they manage to elicit through the targeted individual's personal self. It's very possible then that as the real guides would realize the individual I was in the company of would react to his atrocious past lifetimes in such a way that he would as though take on the consideration of being unworthy through his past lifetime misdeeds and transgressions, the guides would be less likely to reveal such to him until he was ready, until he could stand more so in indifference to them, regardless of how abrasive he had been. And very possible then he had been hit with this dark force tactic of a personal self-discouragement, the revealing of abhorrent past lifetimes. I would speak with him extensively in regards to this, that regardless of the choices and decisions we have made throughout all our lifetimes, all really only serve as comparative references to recognize the years by. That yes, we always are the effects of ourselves and our destructive choices. We will experience in equal measure our abrasiveness and restricting of others' choices and actions, but ultimately we must stand in real awareness objective indifference to all ideas of creation, that we are detached, including emotionally, and no longer the effects of anything, any idea, lifetimes, and the emotional reactions and considerations we apply to them, that we no longer are mired in creation. I would explain to him that we all have had lifetimes which were far from admirable, and would as though open up to him that he be shown a glimpse of some of the past lifetimes where I had operated in a dark force, ill-intended capacities, with all the various distorted body forms I had occupied, as an effected reflection of an equally as distorted consciousness. I would in fact assume one of my previous lifetime distorted forms as an example. I would become a kind of a demonic, grey-scaled, winged body type, as though to emphasize my point. He would be somewhat put at ease in regards to his own past lifetime transgressions, for in actuality he couldn't hold a candle to the lifetimes I had had in regards to abrasiveness and destruction of others, and his personal self-reaction would transition from self-loathing and created feelings of unworthiness to assuming a stance of being in contempt of my unsavoury past lifetimes, a reaction I hadn't intended to elicit in him. Perhaps I went too far in what I revealed to him in regards to my lifetimes, for now he intended to as though seek justice on behalf of all those I had harmed and destroyed from lifetimes past, and would attempt to attack me. I would take to the air on my demonic body form wings, and beyond his reach, and he would as though gather an army of other humans, convincing them to also join in the hunt, and they would pursue me across the streets of the city we were in. They were limited to the ground, however, but very adept at following me as I flew through the air. I was rather humouring them. They could in actuality do nothing to harm me, even if I allowed them to capture me, and rather entertaining was it to make use of this previous winged demon body form, although in reality we can fly on the real side, no wings or means of elevation are necessary. I had the impression that the individual leading the hunting party would eventually come to his senses and continue on with his awareness process, and as an added bonus, as drawn into the situation were the numbers of humans accompanying him on the hunt, that when the individual did cease his need for justice and settle back into his journey of his recognition, undoubtedly he would bring the humans he had gathered with him, and they would at least have afforded to them the option of becoming more aware also. If they indeed decided this would be up to each one of them. But as I said earlier, every situation, regardless of how it pans out, is an opportunity where the sharing of the ears and the new sound connection is concerned. For now, I would increase my flight velocity, leaving the hunting party far behind, and would land in a kind of bell tower. There present would be a number of new friends and others on their respective awareness processes, and indeed a real guide, as impressions would reveal. I would be retaining my demon-winged form and regale the group and the guide with what had just transpired. They would find it all rather amusing, and indeed would produce a set of movie-style recording cameras, as they were representing how the experience, and indeed all those I and others have shared, will make for great movies at some stage.